from the Radio What Studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say it one more time, DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. I do. I like to play for you. Let me entertain you. This week's show's on Friday night. I'll be at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. My one public show as we break out of coronavirus quarantine. It's been going so well. It feels like old times, really. Video dance party, karaoke jam, Friday night at the Rab at 8 p.m. They got a full bar. The kitchen's open, pool tables. They got a pool tournament on Friday nights. So if you want to make some money while you're hanging out on a Friday night, waiting to sing a song next to little old me, I encourage you to do so. Come out to the Rab, Conway, Arkansas. We got time. Come on. You can start driving now, and you'll be at the Rab. You could fly. You could bike, whatever. You know, take a horse. Horse. Does anybody ride horses still? I mean, as transportation. I know people ride horses like for fun, but does anybody ride a horse for transportation in the world? Maybe in third world countries. Possibly. There has to be somebody still using horses as their main mode of transport. I mean, I know the Amish do for sure. They use horses as transport. Hey, I guess there is. Look, I guess I've answered my own question. It's what makes you smarter. It's what I'm doing, trying to make myself smarter. I know that I have plenty of room in this noggin to fill it with knowledge, so I'm going to do so. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, hey, it's good news and history. What I'm trying to do, look, I've been doing the 10 things you need to know today, and that's, current events, finding out, what's going on in the world at this particular moment in time. But I want some good news too. So I'm going to start with the days of the year. There's always something going on in the days of the year. On the days of the year calendar, at least one thing happens every day of the year. And today is no exception. It is Slinky Day. A spring, a marvelous thing. Everyone knows it's Slinky. Oh man, I know. There's a toy from my childhood, a toy from a lot of people's childhoods. I think it's a toy that hasn't gone out of style. It's so simple. It's a spring, a marvelous thing. That little jingle has been heard by millions upon millions of people worldwide. Catchy, and with a toy that is a staple from our own childhoods. The Slinky is a Toy Hall of Fame superstar. Sitting up there with the likes of Barbie, G.I. Joe, and Lego, this powerhouse of a toy has the humblest of beginnings. Even with those humble beginnings, it was more than enough to bring it to the attention of children worldwide, and later having Slinky Day to remember and play with those metal and plastic coils. August 30th. I don't even think I said the date. It's August 30th. History of Slinky Day. The Slinky was originally designed and sold in the 1940s. The inventor had accidentally knocked a spring off the shelf and watched it walk down a series of books to a tabletop, and then to the floor, where it neatly coiled itself. The creator, Richard James, had gone home to his wife, Betty. Isn't that a great set of names? Richard, Betty. That's names from the 40s right there. And said, quote, "I think I've got the right property of steel and the right tension. It could make it walk." Oh, I think if I got the right property of steel and the right tension, I could make it walk. End quote. It took the better part of a year, but he had done it, making 400 Slinky units with a $500 loan. James and his wife had founded a company to make and sell this unique toy to the masses. With $1 for the price tag, they were interesting, but not really a hit until the fateful day that they were granted permission to set up an inclined plane in the toy section of Gimbel's department store. Within 90 minutes, they had sold all 400 of the units, with more being requested. Only a year later, the Slinky was introduced at the American Toy Fair, the largest gathering of businesses that produce and market toys to various stores. Since then, the Slinky has been marketed around the world, with both plastic and metal finding placement around the world in various forms. During the Vietnam War, United States troops used them as mobile radio antennas, as ham H amateur as ham as have amateur radio operators ever since. NASA uses them in experiments on space shuttles, and teachers use them to simulate the properties of oscillation in waves. How to celebrate Slinky Day. Grab one of these toys and go send it down the stairs. See if you can make it go down a full flight of stairs or even longer flights of stairs. Maybe figure out how to get it to walk down a hill, or if you can get it to walk from the table down to some various household things like chairs, books, and end tables to end up neatly coiled on the floor. For those extreme enthusiasts out there, see about breaking the Guinness Book of World Records distance for longest Slinky distance traveled. Maybe look into some of the science behind how the Slinky works and exactly why the Slinky does what it does. What was that? I was watching Ace Ventura: Pet Detective Part 2. I guess I don't remember the subtitle of that one, but I remember he was in a Buddhist temple of some kind, and one of the side throwaway scenes was him trying to get that Slinky to go down that long set of stairs at the Buddhist temple. And I think all right, I don't want to give away the spoilers. If you watch it, you'll see. He gets disappointed at the end. All right, today, August 30th, is also Amagwinya Day. Amagwinya Day. I don't even know what an Amagwinya is, but I'm going to find out right now, and you could find out along with me. Are you a fan of Johnny cakes? What's a Johnny cake? Do you salivate when someone mentions Dutch oliebollen? I don't know what that is. Does it feel like an instant fiesta when you get your hands on sopapillas? Now that I know, sopapillas are bueno. Then Amagwinya Day is going to fill you with another burst of joy by introducing you to the Afrikaner Amagwinya, a fried dough bread that is absolutely incredible and is popular throughout the entire South African region. If you've ever heard of any of these breads, then you're in for a fantastic treat as you discover just how amazing fried bread can be. History of Amagwinya Day. It seems that almost every culture has encountered flour has discovered if you create a light yeast-based dough and drop it in boiling oil, that something magical will happen. Like most fried dough breads, Amagwinya has a distinct similarity to the donut in texture and composition, though its most popular preparations are a far cry away from the sweet and creamy fillings that most people associate with donuts. The word Amagwinya is Zulu in origin and can be translated simply as fat cake. Amagwinya is thought to find its roots in the Dutch oliebollen that found its way down thanks to trade and travelers and has become a common favorite to the populace. Its two most common preparations involve frying the dough, opening it up, and stuffing it with savory curry-based meat filling, or the same combination, only the meat is sealed in the bread before it's fried. Either way, this common treat is warming, filling, and a favorite convenience food that can be found anywhere people gather, from the mass transit in Joburg to open-air street markets. If you're a lover of all things savory and fried, then Amagwinya Day is going to be your opportunity to dive into a whole new set of cuisine that follows a familiar theme. How to celebrate Amagwinya Day. Unless you happen to be an African food restaurant or market nearby, the best way to celebrate this holiday is by digging your hands into the kitchen and making some of your own. Common recipes can be found online to provide you with a foundation to start and a flavor profile to play with. Following that, you can expand your menu to include other common South African dishes like snoek, Snoek, a relative of the barracuda that is a staple that draws people from all over the world, and the slap chips, African French fries, that commonly get served alongside it. Okay. And August 30th is Amagwinya Day. It is also, August 30th is also Grief Awareness Day. Sometimes even the brightest days can be dark when the difficulties of life rear their ugly heads. But there is a silver lining to this. There are those that are willing to help us through these darker days. This is all about looking at grief and raising awareness, both of how to cope with grief and how to help others cope. So look around and offer that helping hand. Lend an ear and join us on Grief Awareness Day to show those around us that we are here for them. The history of Grief Awareness Day. To truly understand how to help people, including yourself, cope with grief, sometimes it's best to try to understand exactly what grief is. It usually is in response to the loss of someone or something important in your life. Many times, bonds of affections or love exist that make it much harder to cope with influx of emotions. Yet many of us forget the cognitive, social, and philosophical difficulties that can come from losing someone close to us. Many believe in the 5 stages of grief, and helping someone go through those stages can be more important than anything during difficult times of grief. First is the stage of denial, where they do not believe the reason for the grief has even occurred. Just being there during that time they are going through this stage is all that is needed. Indeed, many people go through this stage when reminded about anything to deal with the grief. Second is the stage of anger, where one grieving lashes out at anyone or anything around it. Be careful around those in this stage, as occasionally physical manifestations of grief occur here in very violent forms. Third stage is bargaining, where they are focused more on a belief of what if statements, and ideals. The difficulty with guilt can be a hallmark here, but just being there helps many cope with this. The fourth stage is depression. This is the moment when they know the grief is real and it hits them hard. This is not to say that they were not depressed before over the situation, but this is when the depression really comes to the forefront. This moment can be very hard to deal with, but helping them by reminding them of the good things that can help as much as being there for them. The final stage is acceptance, and this is where they are looking forward, not only back. They will never forget, but they will move forward, able to return to normal life after a fashion. These stages are not fully linear. We don't always go through them at once and are done. And we can bounce between them for minutes, hours, days, or even months. Each person is different as their methods of grief and coping with the various stages. How to celebrate Grief Awareness Day. Be there for them. While not all of us are clinically registered, we can help people out in our own ways, whether it is with jokes and laughter or a comforting presence and a warm meal. Each of us can help in those grief in different ways. If there are too many problems, sometimes looking into a counselor, therapist, or other professional may not be out of the question. But remember, no matter the situation, be there for them and offer your help if they need it. That's a little bit about August 30th, Grief Awareness Day. All right, now, I found a website, Good News Network. There's good news out there, not just that news that comes out to the forefront, the news that hits you in the face every time you turn the television news channel on. there's good news out there. And today, good news in history, August 30th. Happy birthday to Warren Buffett, the Oracle from Omaha, who turns 90 years old today. He rose from working in his father's store and delivering newspapers to becoming a multi-billionaire and the most successful American investor of the 20th century. As much as he has earned, Buffett has also gifted $37 billion in donations to charity efforts in just the past 14 years. And he co-founded the Giving Pledge, where he and other wealthy people promise to give away all their wealth before they die. And he was born in 1930. Happy birthday, Warren Buffett. Also, more good news on this day. Two Yankee businessmen brought brothers Augustus and John Kirby Allen bought 8,850 acres of swampland and founded the city of Houston, Texas, funding the roads and buildings at the core of what will become the fourth most populous city in the U.S. and one that recently moved 4,100 homeless veterans into permanent housing. This was in 1836. More good news on this date in history. A communication hotline between U.S. and Soviet leaders went into operation, 1963. The album Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan was released, 1965. Striking Polish workers of the Solidarity Movement, led by Lech Walesa, won a sweeping victory after a 2-month battle with their communist rulers for the right to organize independent unions and the right to strike. This was in 1980. Former U.S. Colonel Guion S. Bluford Jr. was launched into space on the Shuttle Challenger and became the first black astronaut, 1983. On this date, August 30th, 1967, Thurgood Marshall was confirmed as the first black judge named to the U.S. Supreme Court. He was best known for the high success rate achieved when he argued before the highest court in the land, particularly the victory in Brown versus Board of Education, a 1954 decision that ruled segregated public schools to be unconstitutional. Born in Baltimore, Maryland, and descended from slaves, his middle-class parents instilled in him, quote, an appreciation for the United States Constitution and the rule of law, end quote. And on this date in 1918, perhaps the greatest baseball hitter of all time was born. Playing his career with the Boston Red Sox, Ted Williams was one of only two athletes ever to win 2 Triple Crowns. That's leading a league in batting average, home runs, and runs batted in. His career on base percentage, .482, was the highest of all time. No player since Williams in 1941 has posted a batting average over 400 in a season. He missed 5 prime years on the field because he chose to serve in World War II and the Korean War as a bomber pilot. Upon his return to sports at age 39 and 40, he was the AL batting champion for the 5th and 6th time. He wrote a book called The Science of Hitting. He was featured on PBS American Masters Series. 111 years ago on this date in history, August 30th, the American paleontologist and geologist Charles Walcott discovered a treasure trove of fossils in the Burgess Shale tucked high in the Canadian Rockies, famous today for having perfectly preserved the soft parts of its half-billion-year-old fossils, Middle Cambrian. The limestone deposit is one of the earliest fossil beds of its kind. The 59-year-old former administrator of the Smithsonian Institution returned the following year to establish a quarry on the flanks of Fossil Ridge and uncovered a plethora of organisms new to science. In 15 years, he had amassed over 65,000 specimens from the area, including imprints of animals with bizarre anatomical features that only slightly resembled other known species, including the opabinia with 5 eyes and a snout like a vacuum cleaner hose, describing all the fossils which were created when the land mass was still part of a massive underwater reef in the Pacific Ocean, remained a vast task that Walcott pursued until his death 17 years later. Watch a video of, quote, the world's most important fossil find, end quote. This was 1909. That was fantastic. There is some good news out there and a little history for us all. That's cool. All right. Well, that's it for today. If you look at history.com, you'll see a little bit more about Thurgood Marshall and all the good things he did. In fact, you know what? Since I'm here, since I'm at history.com, I know that we've already talked about Thurgood Marshall a little bit, but I think it's pretty important. He was a pretty important dude in this on this date in history. August 30th, 1967, Thurgood Marshall becomes the first African American to be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. He would remain on the Supreme Court for 24 years before retiring for health reasons, leaving a legacy of upholding the rights of the individual as guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. From a young age, Marshall seemed destined for a place in the American justice system. His parents instilled in him an appreciation for the Constitution, a feeling that was reinforced by his school teachers, who forced him to read the document as punishment for his misbehavior. After graduating from Lincoln University in 1930, Marshall sought admission to the University of Maryland School of Law, but was turned away because of the school's segregation policy, which effectively forbade blacks from studying with the whites. Instead, Marshall attended Howard University Law School, from which he graduated magna cum laude in 1933. Marshall later successfully sued Maryland School of Law for their unfair admissions policy. Setting up private practice in his home state of Maryland, Marshall quickly established a reputation as a lawyer for the, quote, little man, end quote. In a year's time, he began working with the Baltimore NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and went on to become the organization's chief counsel by the time he was 32. In 1940, over the next 2 decades, Marshall distinguished himself as one of the country's leading advocates for individual rights, winning 29 of the 32 cases that he argued in front of the Supreme Court, all of which challenged in some way the separate but equal doctrine that had been established by the landmark case Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896. The high watermark of Marshall's career as litigator came in 1954 with his victory in Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. In that case, Marshall argued that the separate but equal principle was unconstitutional and designed to keep blacks as near slavery as possible. That's on this date in history. A little good news, a little history today on August 30th. Thank you so much for listening. This has been What Makes You Smarter. This is KeysDAN. Hey, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Also, if you'd like to watch me stream some games online, I've been doing that pretty frequently now. I think I'm going to set up a schedule and help people to find out when I'm doing it all the time. But if you look at hashtag KeysDAN Gaming, you could pretty much find all the videos that I've done so far. Hey, watch me fail and watch me get better at these games as I play them. It's just something for you to do, something for you to spend your time doing. You know, spend a little more time with yours truly, KeysDAN. Yeah, watch me work, watch me whip, watch me nay. I said that to my 14-year-old daughter earlier. She said, "What are you doing, Dad? What are you doing with your life?" I'm having fun. All right, that's it for me. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.